Hall is brought to you by Mia Mason Congress. I'd like to welcome our special guests tonight, Jane Seiss, Arundel Gandhi, and Susan Felton. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. Before we introduce our wonderful hosts, I'd like to start the town hall with a focusing activity to get everyone's mind into the right place for tonight's discussion. Please post your answers to the following question.
Chat box. What is the biggest obstacle standing in the way of quality education? While those answers are coming in, I'd like to introduce our guests. Jane Seiss, Executive Director, is a freelance writer and editor and a long-term volunteer with the Anne Arundel County Literacy Council. This September, she became the council's Executive Director. Jane is an immigrant to the United States from Northern Ireland. She holds a BA in Communications from Notre Dame of Maryland University. At the Literary Council, Jane previously served as a tutor coordinator, matching tutors with our basic literacy and ESL students, distributing council news and planning producing training sessions, fundraising, and celebrity events and outreach. Arundel Gandhi, HSE Math and ASVAB Coordinator. Arundel Gandhi holds a PhD in cell and molecular biology from the University of Mumbai in India, and worked for many years as a cancer researcher at the Tufts University School of Medicine in Boston. For the past 5 years, she has been actively involved with the Anne Arundel County Literacy Council as a tutor, math assessor, trainer, and coordinator for the high school equivalency and ASVAB programs. She enjoys interacting with both students and tutors and strives to match each student with the appropriate resources so they have the tools to meet their goals. Susan Felton, HSE Math and ASVAB Coordinator. Susan Felton holds a BS and an MBA from the American University in International Relations and Business, a retired electric utility executive. Susan is the consummate volunteer these days with a focus on 3 organizations. She joined the Literacy Council several years ago as a tutor and helped develop its math and GED, NEPD, HSE, ASVAB programs. Currently, Susan works as a tutor, assessor, trainer, and coordinator for the council. She also is the proud sponsor of 4 Class of 2024 Midshipmen at the U.S. Naval Academy. And Mia Mason, running as the Congressional Democratic nominee for District 1. She is a 20-year veteran who served in the Army, Navy, and D.C. National Guard. Mia retired in 2018 and shifted her focus to advocacy and fighting to restore equity and equality back into our communities. While our answers are coming in, I'd like to get our panel's response to the question, what is the biggest obstacle standing in the way of quality education?
Well, I'll go first. Probably the most obvious obstacle is lack of funding for teachers, programs, and resources that could improve our education system.
And interesting, you should say that because the one that came in on the chat said the exact same thing, lacking of funding. So. Yeah. Anybody else? Paranas?
Sure. So I want to first focus on what is quality education? What do you term as quality education? And I would consider a quality education when knowledge is imparted to every individual while catering to their specific abilities and strengths. So basically, I think we need to cater our education to each individual because this one-size-fits-all policy is not really working. And we need to really help everyone succeed in life. And success is not just getting a fabulous job. It could also be managing your home effectively and doing what is best for your family, making good decisions, or even just improving their current situation. So considering all this quality education, I think I have to side with Jane that funding, again, is required to get a quality education, and maybe funding will help get more teachers in class who can focus on the students' needs more than just teaching them as one big classroom.
And I would also add to that that the funding would help with equity in every county in the district, as opposed to some being better educated, having better resources. If we could spread it all out, make it equal across the board, then we have a better system as well. What about you, Susan?
You have to unmute yourself and stay unmuted. Unmute yourself.
Left bottom corner.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I agree with Paranaz that first we have to define what a quality education is, and it's going to vary by the student. We have the luxury, and working primarily with adults, that we are one-on-one, tutor to student, which gives us an opportunity to focus on the individual needs and requirements of the students. Some of our students require a great deal of basics in order to just deal with functions in life. Other students require just passing a test in order to qualify for a job or to be admitted to a community college or a higher college. So quality education is one that meets both the societal and the individual needs with the support and resources that are critical to the individual needs and the community at large.
And Nia?
I think that quality education for anyone is about the immersion, the association of how they learn, because everybody has a different way of learning, you know, and that funding can make sure that everybody is able to be taught, because in order to take a test, it normally doesn't demonstrate exactly what that person is capable of. Once they understand the fundamentals of learning, whatever task or job or skill they may have, it is about making sure that it is a life trait that they get to have, that they can pass on to others. Because we want to make sure that if we take away police funding and provide federal funding to our teachers, they're empowered to make sure that every child is taught, you know, can be different, but we want to make sure that the same lesson is of value for everyone who's going to graduate or move on to the next grade, and not be relied upon, you know, a standard of testing.
Makes a lot of sense. And now we're going to turn the show over to Jane, and she's going to do a PowerPoint presentation for us.
Okay, we're going to share a PowerPoint presentation that gives you some background on the Anne Arundel County Literacy Council. So I'm going to pull that up now. Can everyone see the screen?
We can.
Good. Okay, so we are the Anne Arundel County Literacy Council, and we've been introduced. I'm Jane Cease, Executive Director, and I'm joined tonight by Paranaz and Susan Felton, our high school equivalency, math, and ASVAB coordinators. First, we're going to share with you a glimpse at our office. We have a cubicle in a shared office in an office building with the county in Anne Arundel County on West Street in Annapolis. The Anne Arundel County Literacy Council targets the 46,000 and more adults and out-of-school youth in our county who do not have a high school diploma and could benefit from our programs. We provide free one-on-one tutoring in basic literacy, equivalency, and English language learning. We also have a new program that helps military recruits pass the ASVAB test, which is an entrance test for those enlisting in the military. We use a teaching method design tutors, and we like to say, if you can read, you can teach. The Literacy Council was recognized again in 2019, and I just found out this week we have literacy, English as a second language, high school equivalency, program that is run here for.
I'm sorry, but your internet, it seems to be cutting in and out, and your audio is not coming through at all. And we've lost the host.
Well,
Yeah,
here she's back.
Back.
there you go. Probably need to.
And it's your turn to be muted. There.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, this is a lot better. We were only
Okay.
getting like one word per 20 seconds, and I guess that's just because how bad our rural internet is and why we need to get it fixed.
One of your platforms, Mia.
I know. I see you down there. It's just that we have a lot of other people watching, and we want to make sure that they get the message that you're trying to deliver. So I'm pretty sure you know the slides by heart. Just tell us why it's important.
Okay, so let me just pick up where I left off. So we have, did you guys catch the part where I told you what our programs included?
I'm not even sure.
Okay.
I
So
know
we
the
ha-
last part you left off was helping military ASVABs.
Okay, so we have programs in adult literacy, English as a second language, high school equivalency, college entrance test help, and the Armed Forces entrance test, which is the ASVAB. We recently began a program with local Army recruiting offices, and we help some of their students with tutoring so that they can pass the ASVAB and enlist. Some of our collaborators in the community include Arundel Lodge, the Chrysalis House, the Anne Arundel County Public School System's NEDP program, which helps adults earn a high school diploma, the Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis, Jennifer Rowe Detention Center, Ordnance Road Detention Center, group volunteers, detention centers, earning GED, improving their reading. We also work with the Lighthouse Shelter, psychotherapeutic treatment services, and again, the Army recruiting offices in Annapolis and Glen Burnie. And students find us in lots of different ways, through their employers, their churches, local libraries. We get student and tutor referrals. We do community outreach, and we even get referrals from college counselors. We're going to share some of our 2019 and 2020 statistics. Today we have an amazing 326 trained volunteer tutors in our program and 21 staff, and they're all volunteers. Last year, our tutors and staff together donated more than 13,000 hours of their time. Currently, we have about 270 active students. 92 of them last year were basic literacy students. Last year, we had 75 ESL students. And last year, we had 103 students who were pursuing a high school diploma or seeking help to prepare for the ASVAB. Our current waiting list is about 20 students, and most of those students are on our waiting list because of COVID-related issues. Our students may have difficulties with access to technology and internet, So that has been challenging since the pandemic made meeting in person difficult. And now I'm going to pass off to Susan, who's going to finish what would have been our PowerPoint presentation.
Mia, we're also proud to say that because your county district does not have a literacy council, we actually have several students from inside of your geographic boundaries that cross the bridge to get tutored by us. So we don't limit ourselves to Anne Arundel County. We'll help any Maryland resident who doesn't have access to this kind of tutoring. We're very proud of our website. Anyone can go to it, icanread.org. And at our website, we provide resources for students, their families, tutors, as well as information for our donors, and allows our supporters to follow the phenomenal stories of all of our students. The next slide would have been a group of pictures of our tutors and our students. And the most frequently asked question that most of our tutors get is, why do you volunteer when you could get paid for tutoring? And if a picture's worth 1,000 words, when you can eventually go to our website, you'll see the expressions and understand that the reward we receive is phenomenal. Just looking at these young people, these young adults, and adults up to the age of 80 who have a lifelong dream of getting a high school diploma and having their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren watch them walk across the stage. It's a phenomenal gift that we are given from every one of our students. There are also very tangible results to our community that include jobs, pay scales, advancement of community involvement, health issues, self-pride, the ability to support your family and just read to your children, so much more that our tutors and our students gain. It isn't just a high school diploma or math literacy, it's self-improvement and self-involvement. We do need help, more help than we get from local and private sources to continue to provide these services at no cost to our students. We never charge a student for anything, not for tutoring hours, not for their educational information. We rely on grants and simply sponsorships in order to provide the books and the time and the resources. Right now, probably the largest single thing that is hurting us with COVID is the fact that many of our students they may have access to a computer, but with the libraries closed, they don't have access to Wi-Fi. They don't have the ability to work with us online. And we traditionally meet in public locations, but transportation also becomes an issue. Free public transportation, universal Wi-Fi would be phenomenal. At the federal level, we also have issues. We look at things like the ASVAB, which is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. And we find many of the questions are culturally biased, particularly when we're looking at vocabulary issues. We look at funding, trying to find books that we can share with these students that actually teach to this test. We have also noted that there's a great deal of emphasis on reading comprehension, but many of our students need help in writing, and there's no test to show whether or not you can reproduce the information well because you can't computer grade those things. Access to schools, access to Wi-Fi, these are things that we think are at a federal level that we look to our Congress to help us as a member of all of the literacy groups across the nation. And that's a short summary of what the Anne Arundel Literacy Council does. And on behalf of all three of us and all of our volunteers and staff, we'd like to thank you for this opportunity.
You're more than welcome.
Okay, so now we will move into the question and answer portion of our town hall. Please post your questions into the chat box. And while we're waiting for those to come in, I'll ask a couple of questions. What is the biggest obstacle standing in the way of quality education besides funding?
Oh, that's a very good question. Maybe I would say that since education traditionally for many years, probably since the Industrial Revolution, has been one size fits all, maybe we've said this at the beginning of tonight's town hall, maybe one of the biggest challenges is the lack of individualized education. We have so many adults in our tutoring program who fell through the cracks. They went to school for possibly all 12 years of grade school, graduated, but came out of the system unable to read or not functionally math literate. And it's because they were passed through the grades and something wasn't addressed along the way.
Okay, and I would add to that, one of the single most issues that Paranas and I have looked at is the fact that they no longer are teaching some of the fundamentals in most of the elementary schools. We don't allow calculators to be used on these tests, yet most of our students have never been taught the multiplication tables. They've been taught to operate a calculator in their elementary school. They're given solar-powered calculators, and then we test them and say, no, you can't use the calculator. You have to be able to do it in your head or on a piece of paper. It's just not fair. We have to match the teaching criteria with the testing criteria.
And I want to add one more thing, that we absolutely must make sure that every student in middle school, not even high school, because they seem to be dropping out by high school, every student in middle school graduates knowing to read and write well. It's not that I don't want to do my volunteering work with the Literacy Council, but we want them to be independent by middle school, at least to read and write and do basic arithmetic so they can survive in life. It's not that they cannot survive, they can. But many of our students have come to us in their 50s and have told us that they went through life without knowing to read and write. And there was this one gentleman who did really well at his job, but every time he got a promotion, he would have to read a manual or read something at his work. So what he did was just quit. He quit his job every time he had a promotion. Every time he was promoted, he just quit his job. And you don't want anyone to be in that position ever. So I think it should be mandatory that we focus on our kids learning to read, write, and do basic math, just basic math. And I don't mean to bring down our education level. It's not that, but there are kids who are falling through the cracks, and we need to really get them and make sure this basic skill is learned.
And to further expand on that, a lot of that also has to do with meeting the needs of special needs students as well, because if a child isn't discovered that they're dyslexic or have any other type of learning disability and they fall through those cracks, then they're never able to catch up.
Yeah,
Right.
And here's the other thing. Like when I grew up, I remember my school system trying to change to Ebonics to teach down to another level. I was like, wait, aren't we all supposed to be tested through the standards of learning of how to do this? I recall Dewey Decimal System. I recall not having Google. I didn't have AOL. I didn't have anything that was like Dr. Google or Wikipedia. And when I got to college, it was like, a brain stump to learn all of this and then reference everything. We've given the kids the technology and the YouTube and the Linden and everything else, but have they actually absorbed any of that knowledge? Have they actually associated any of that knowledge? This is where we're kind of failing and making it entertaining. And I think a lot of teachers right now during the pandemic are learning this the hard way versus the normal lecturing, teaching, and hands-on training that they do, because now they're stuck like you and I behind a screen trying to explain to an audience and captivate them on how to learn something. And I hope that we can learn something tonight from this, so that we can teach others about how to make this system better. I think that would be wonderful because, with the funding that we want to be able to redirect or get legalization to help us provide more revenue for our school system, we want to make sure that we have new tools and new avenues to give you to make an improvement in everybody's life. Because I don't care if you get a GED, I want you to be able to make sure that you read and write, that you're able to do a job and able to speak in any language that you want, as long as you're able to get paid and have health care and a sustainable life here in Maryland. I think that is part of the American dream for everyone. And it has to start with us. It has to start with our teachers. It has to start with our parents. It has to start with the legislators and the judicial systems to help make sure this happens. How do we do that?
Susan had touched on this earlier, and if we could all perhaps expand on that as well. What can be done on a federal level to address the inequalities that we have in our education system?
Well, again, funding would be very important for the school systems, but also perhaps from our point of view for the low-income families, which we are aiming to help and support. Our tutors meet with their students at local libraries, so we're particularly interested in good transportation for these students, public transportation, because many of them don't have cars. And so we would ask for good local public transportation so that students can get to public libraries, community colleges. And then again, we feel that internet access and access to technology is really important, and that access to high quality broadband internet should be perhaps considered a utility, something that everyone should have access to. And that would really help us close the gap for families that are low income.
I think if elected, I can definitely work on that. We have many of our plans that can provide that. It's just about getting it past the Senate and then getting it to the president's desk so that Maryland, we call the governor up and say the money's on the way. And then those programs and projects can get started. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort. But we're going to make sure that we lobby to get it, no matter who's in office.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just want to expand on what Jane said, that the computer is not just important for studying. It's needed to apply for jobs, to apply for a library card, for any little thing, even for interviewing for a job. We had a tutor who recently had to go against the rules and help this student of hers get access to the internet. So she went around to different libraries to see if she was able to connect to the internet because the student had a job interview. So it's really hard. It's really hard for students to work through these things. And at this time, we found that a lot of students are not coming to us or unable to work with us because they don't have a computer or don't have internet access.
I agree with
Public
you on that
transport.
one. Yeah. And I think one of the hardest things that y'all touched on earlier was public transportation. You know, in order for me to get down to Annapolis, I would have to take the light rail, then take a bus, and it would take maybe an hour, 2 hours just to get to Annapolis. And then some of the buses are just for kids. I didn't know that. I got stuck. And most of all the other buses, they go directly to DC and they only operate in one direction in the morning or afternoon. And they don't use the charm card, they use something else. And I was like, I can't get on a kid's bus because I'm not a kid. And I wanted to go to DC and I couldn't get on the DC bus because, you know what? It's only for the mornings and afternoons in different directions. So I definitely agree that we need to be able to expand public transportation and even get it into our district in the Eastern Shore, because guess what? We have those cars and rides, but many times our young students don't even have an opportunity to get a driver's license because it's something that is unaffordable, or because they live in a city. They just walk down the block, ride their bike, or get a ride to work. And this is something where only local businesses can help them stay employed. And now, because of this pandemic, those businesses have shut down or have been lost. Now those folks are coming to the western side of the bridge and trying to find a job and everything else, and they're realizing that they can't even go across the bridge because it's considered a highway.
The other thing that we really would love to see at a federal level is many of the federal entrance exams need to be updated. They really are dated, they are culturally biased, and they do not reflect the current academic, the one child left behind curriculums. Unless we can't expect people to be tested on things they've never been taught.
I agree. Teaching to the test is normally the wrong answer.
Absolutely wrong.
And I have to say that without me being in a different type of school where I was the minority, I would have been taught a completely different mindset about what the world looked like. And I'm glad that I went to the school that I went to. It was a struggle, but I got through it and I succeeded. I joined the military and did a lot of great things. And of course, the ASVAB test only tells you what the test tells you. It doesn't tell you what you're capable of or who you can be. That's another reason I'm running for office, to prove those folks wrong, because even a friend of mine who's out in Montana is an active duty spouse. So, I think if she can win for office, I can win for office, and others who have taken this ASVAB test can become great leaders and mentors and even teachers. And we've seen our military folks become teachers. They were great substitute teachers as well as they working to get their teacher's degree. I think it's very, very helpful for us to make sure that these programs stay intact, teach diversity, and not allow any administration to remove these programs from our federal budget.
All excellent points, Mia.
Thank you.
Our next question. What is the toughest challenge for teachers right now?
COVID.
Definitely.
Normally it's coffee.
I think the worst thing is not being able to meet their student face to face, and people are really struggling with that. And I think that's happening with our tutors who are working with adults, as well as teachers who are teaching young kids. So I think that lack of face-to-face communication, or even on a computer, it just doesn't match what you have in person. When you're teaching somebody, you look over their shoulders, try to catch their mistakes. Sometimes when I'm tutoring somebody, I ask, show me your hands. Are you using a calculator? So that is the biggest thing, the personal touch.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you, because teaching is also an emotional instinct to understand exactly where they could go wrong to help them through their difficulty. Normally, if a parent isn't there, they're also stuck in Zoom for 3 hours or more. And I'm like, even in college with online learning, I was on a computer for 8 to 9 hours a day for the majority of my day. And I was like, how can I expect a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old to do this when there's no breaks? I mean, like, when I was online college, I got a break when I needed a break. And when I was actually on ground campus, I was able to get a break like every hour, maybe 2 hours. But our school systems here in Maryland want them in front of a computer for 3 hours straight. And I'm like, the kids need a break. That's why classes were always 45 minutes or a half hour or an hour. And then you would go walk the hall to your next class. That gave you that relief to change your mindset and flip the switch to your next subject so that you can be involved in learning that. With being stuck in front of Zoom constantly with a teacher that may or may not be the fun or friendliest, but also some of the most energetic teachers, it could be depriving that student of what they could actually learn or strive to be.
Hey, this question has just come in. Can you explain how cycle of educational inequality and lack of resource allocation creates generational inequity? Jane.
Thank you for picking me. I would say that as it relates to our work with adult students, we recently analyzed some of our statistics from last year, and we found that as many as 62% of our current students are African American. So those are adults that the education system failed, and they're low income. So there were many opportunities missed along the line for these students. Some of them have learning disabilities, or they had situations or inequalities and racism that they faced that made school very difficult for them. And now they're coming back to us for help so that they can earn their diplomas, better their lives, have better jobs, or do better in their jobs. And I would say that perhaps they were in a system that was unfair to them.
There's also the point that generational inequality, if your parents have been reading to you and you go into the first grade with a vocabulary that's expansive because you've been read to, you have a head start, and you build on that head start and you stay ahead. Children whose parents are working 2, 3, 4 jobs because they can't make a living in this day and age on a sub-minimum wage basis, they don't have time to spend with the kids, and they rely on older siblings. Many of our students are the eldest child who was forced to quit school to take care of younger siblings. And even if they are extremely bright and extremely motivated, they have a hard time dealing with all of the family pressure. And they wind up staying home to take care of the kids and to help the kids with the homework and to do that job that would normally fall to a parent if they were making a living wage.
And then just to add on to what Jane and Susan said, we have students who have realized in their 50s and 60s how important an education is and what they missed out on. So they have pushed their kids to go ahead and finish their high school and join community college, do something more than they did. They really have tried. There was this one student we had who challenged her daughter to take the GED because she had dropped out of high school when she got pregnant. She told her daughter, look, I don't have a high school diploma, but I am going to get my GED, and I challenge you to it. So that encouraged the daughter to get her GED. The daughter cleared very quickly. She got her GED very quickly. But the mother worked painstakingly because I think she had a learning disability, but she's working painstakingly through the NEDP program and is near the end. She's close to the end. So the mother met her goal, and so did the daughter. So I think at least students who are coming to us see how important education is, and they're trying to get their kids to become better or be better than they were.
Yeah, I have to agree. Any child that is out there learning with a learning disability relies pretty much on technology, and if that device doesn't have Wi-Fi or anything else, they miss out on a lot of things. I have 7 screens for a reason. I have text-to-speech for a reason. You know, I have spell check for a reason. You know, it's because, you know, when I grew up, they were trying to teach me something that I wasn't ready to learn, and I had to learn on my own the hard way after going through the military and getting out and going to college myself, and then understanding why I had to learn, why I needed this, and why I had to do it. It wasn't just because I was getting tested on Friday. It was because it actually helped me in my job. It helped me in what I'm doing now. It allowed me to speak better than what I was before because I was taught a different way. So how we're taught also provides us a disability and other avenues in the way, and we have to be able to have good mentors and teachers to lead us to become great leaders.
Okay, everybody. Next question is expanding on that, and it is, can you also provide a more in-depth explanation of how SATs and ACTs reproduce this cycle?
Well, I took the SAT many years ago, and I only know what I've read in articles and studies that have been done. So I'll just share that from my point of view, those tests are unfair because they put certain students at a disadvantage. And for example, my son does not do well in testing. He needs extra time and space to think about his answers. So I think that when he applies to college, he'll probably apply to a college that doesn't require those tests, and that's actually becoming more common. There are more colleges and universities every year that are declaring that they're no longer requiring those tests. They have been deemed unfair.
I agree, and the other sad thing is some of those same colleges, like here in Maryland, have decided to have their own placement test, and I've taken one of those tests, and it was kind of unfair because it only judged me on 2 skill sets, math and English. It didn't test me on anything else. No government, no geographics, no nothing. It was only math and English, and basically that put me in a certain category and a percentage to then skip a class or not skip a class and then restart everything that I learned for the last nearly 30 years of my life to redo it again just to make a small 2% improvement. These placement tests are also causing folks to spend more money in colleges to make the colleges more profitable when they can actually, be given a lot earlier in high school.
Right. There are a lot of students who have the money to do SAT prep courses, which are very expensive.
Yes.
And then there are also students who don't have the money to do that. So that in itself is unfair.
One of the things that we focus heavily on for our students who have to take tests is test-taking skills. And we actually have tutors who specialize in this and help students deal with performance anxiety. How do you go about selecting the best answer of a multiple choice? What do you need to do? And these things are never taught in regular school, but they're assumed. And the people who have taken these, as Jane said, specialty preparation classes get an unfair advantage that is usually driven by the finances of their family, not by the quality of the education they received.
And most of us are still taught turkey, turkey, chicken, fish, or see your way out. And that doesn't work. You actually have to learn and understand exactly what you're being taught. And most of the times when you take a test, it's something that you've never even heard of or learned about in school. So then you're actually guessing. And that's not a good way to have our students when they're taught a certain test and then next year the test changes. We need to have just a broad education so that we have in-depth knowledge of what we are becoming a subject matter expert of.
Very true. Anybody else want to add to that? Okay, we have another one come in. You mentioned earlier that individuals who have dropped out when they were younger regret this decision as they get older. What changes need to be made in primary and secondary schools to ensure more students stay in school and graduate?
Well, I think you could even take it beyond the primary and secondary schools and say that we need to support families that are vulnerable with better programs so that the people who may be low income or in other vulnerable groups have better childcare options, better transportation, better opportunities for jobs, and overall support so that their children can go to school and not have to worry about having enough food or having to go to a job to support their family when they're in school. And then for English language learners, who are in schools. We need more support for those students so that they can learn English in school and they can keep up with the rest of the class. We need more resources for those students and also for special needs students.
I think that a lot of students often fall into these simple categories. Most are, they have other life events happen to them. They're caught up in what's going on around them and they're failing too many classes. The other thing is that some of the students are very bored, and they think that it's not contributing to their cause because in their mindset, they want to be an astronaut. They want to be the next president. They understand what their goals are and what they are being taught isn't part of what they're teaching. A doctor probably needs a different skill set, and we need to be able to identify those at a younger age so that we can teach and mentor that child to be better. Because the other percentage, like you said, we're going to become caregivers, and that's because they ended up having children, or the parents ended up having children, and then they were forced to stay at home to take care of the children, their own children, not it's mom's and dad's child, but they're the oldest, and they have to take care of everybody else in the entire house. I remember having to cook, do laundry, do dishes, and everything else, and I was like, why? Why can't my mom do this? Oh, she's working 2 jobs. My stepdad working 2 jobs. My dad working 3 jobs. It is a bad place to be in when you're having to take care of others in your life and in your household. I think the last thing that is, a lot of folks say that this isn't my time. This is why they then come back and get their GED, or then go back and say, hey, in order for me to get this promotion, it requires a BA. What's that? Or a BS. What's that? And then they realize that it takes 4 to 6 to 8, maybe 10 years for them to get it. Then they say, yeah, that's just not for me. But we need to be able to make sure that later on we change this legislation to provide affordable education to everyone.
I have a question, and that is, I am a resident of Maryland, but I'm primarily a resident in New York. And I know that even in New York, from neighborhood to neighborhood, the quality of the education differs greatly based on the economies of that neighborhood. And here in Maryland, it is kind of the same thing. The county that I live in Maryland, the people that have the means send their children to private schools because they say that the education isn't sufficient enough here. How, on a federal and on a local level, can we ensure that we get equal education around the whole district instead of it being better in wealthier areas? And again, this goes back to our earlier questions about inequity in race and neighborhoods, etc., as well.
A lot comes down to prioritization when we're doing our budgeting, whether it's education, whether it's policing, whatever it is. We seem to always have enough money to buy the insurance policy to pay off the programs that fail. Well, why don't we take some of that money and put it into programs that succeed and avoid the lawsuits? If we put less, the millions of dollars that are allocated to pay off for failures would be better spent not to insurance companies, but to teachers, to police officers, to firefighters, to first responders. I am not an advocate of school vouchers. I believe the money needs to go to public schools. If we focus on the public schools, you get what you monitor. The more focus we put on it, the more we require and demand quality, the more likely we are to get it, not by sending kids off to special private schools because my parents can afford it. Let's put quality education in the public school systems.
So I know that the Board of Educations have to be held accountable. They're elected officials. They're on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Pick the right people. Pick the right policy. Go to your city council. Make noise. As John Lewis said, cause some good trouble. Right? Find out what is the root. Because I guarantee you, when you're looking at a budget of, 5 or 6 million, and 1.3 is just, you know, in the police. Where's the rest of it going? You know, the city can take out bonds, etc., and then, you know, provide growth. We have the blueprint for Maryland. We have the Kerwin Commission. They got vetoed. This is money for schools, infrastructure, Wi-Fi, all of those things for our teachers so that they can be done. I've seen several new schools get built on our Eastern Shore. I'm like, okay, all right. Is this going to become the next detention center? That's my concern. I don't want our brand new high schools and middle schools and elementary schools to become detention centers because our students aren't even going to school here. They're going to private schools. We need to be able to make sure the public funding that we're providing, even from the federal level, gets used correctly. And that's the part of the equity I want to be able to restore. Because if Howard County, Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County, St. Mary's, Baltimore, and other counties all have like buku dollars, like Baltimore City itself got $1 billion. And I'm like, wait, Eastern Shore gets $100,000? These are the things that really need to change. And I think that's the part of the equity that we need to be able to make sure is, you know, how can I say this? Managed from the federal level to say, no, 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 that's not going to work. Take it back to your state delegates, take it back to your state senators and get it fixed so that it's more equitable and provides the equality for everyone within the school system, because that money really does matter when it comes to hiring the teachers. Because how many resource officers do you really need for a group of 120 students on the Eastern Shore? That's the other issue that I see.
Well, going back to an earlier question and giving it a different twist, one of the questions was, what is the toughest challenge for teachers right now? And I would gather to say that one of those is a pay scale for the teachers. And I know that's something you're advocating for, Mia. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think that our teachers definitely need to be making more than minimum wage. I think that, you know, a lot of the times they're not given any type of bonuses for the type of work that they've done, for the merit that they provide to their students, and they're often dismissed before they're even eligible to be retired. And I think, you know, making sure that that stays there and that they have something to rely upon to help our students and an incentive to teach our students will be very grateful for our teachers to be able to stay in the career path that they chose from a young age or a middle age in order to, you know, make other families and children prosper. So putting something in their bank account will really help them out, and also into their pensions.
And also attract higher quality teachers as well.
Regardless of what zip code they live in or how much money their school system gets paid. That should come from the state.
Excellent. Before we wrap this up, does anybody have anything else they would like to add? I think we're all good. Thank you, everybody, for your...
Jane
Well,
looks like
sorry?
she was about to say something. What about you, Gandhi? Anything?
No.
Okay.
Just thank you so much for this opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And thank you all for
being with me.
participating.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening, everybody, and thank you to the participants that have been adding questions into us as well.
And
Thank you.
how do we get a hold of your organization?
You can visit our website, which is really easy to remember. Our website is icanread.org, and there's lots of great information on the website.
Good. And are y'all available on the weekends as well?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing that. And with that, y'all have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for joining me and allowing us to, you know, get your message out there to the entire state of Maryland, regardless of where they live.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mia.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mia. Have a wonderful night, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.